The opening scene is set in a mental institution, where a teenage girl named Sumite is undergoing treatment for shock and psychosis. The doctor tries to talk to her by showing her family photographs, but the traumatized girl remains silent. The doctor then inquires about her experiences leading to her hospitalization, but she gives no response. The scene then cuts to a few days later, when Sumai returns to her family's isolated countryside residence with her father, Mugyeon, and her younger sister, Sugyeon. Upon their arrival, both sisters hesitate to enter, as they hate their stepmother, Unju. As a result, they head down to a pier by the lake and enjoy some fresh air. A short while later, they are summoned back to the house, where they are greeted by Unju's feigned welcome. Though she pretends to be pleasant, the two sisters remain unresponsive and walk upstairs to their room. Inside her room, Sumai starts unpacking and arranging her belongings, only to discover that there is already an exact same diary on her desk. She is further surprised to find clothes with the same design in her closet, appearing as if she isn't allowed to wear other patterned clothes. Later on, the family gathers for dinner, but the atmosphere remains quiet. Unju eventually breaks the silence by announcing that she has invited her brother and his wife to dinner the next day. However, nobody appears interested in this, and even the father hastily finishes his meal to leave. Sumai then expresses her disapproval of dining with her stepmother's brother. With this, she leaves the dining table, followed by her sister. As they make their way to their room, Sumai, who is protective of her younger sister, asks her to confide in her if their stepmother ever bothers her. Following this, everyone retires to their respective beds. Mugyeon seems uncomfortable sharing a bed with Unju, so he goes to sleep on the living room sofa instead. This highlights the strained relationship between the two of them. At the stroke of midnight, Sugyeon is awakened by a strange noise coming from outside her room. Soon after, the door creaks open, revealing a woman's hand slowly extending inward. Overwhelmed by fear, Sugyeon swiftly hides herself under her blanket, but the blanket gradually tugs away as well. Moments later, the door suddenly slams shut, freaking the girl out. As a result of this, she runs to Sumai's room and confides in her. Hearing the incident, Sumai walks downstairs to check, but only sees the television broadcasting static. She also finds her father asleep on the sofa and takes a moment to adjust his blanket. Just then, her stepmother shows up from the shadows, telling her not to disturb him. However, Sumai starts an argument and abruptly leaves. She then consoles her sister with a comforting hug, and the two fall asleep. During the early hours of morning, Sumai is plagued by a nightmarish vision involving her dead mother. Upon awakening, she is confronted by a horrifying apparition, a long-haired woman who crawls along the ground. The spectral figure becomes aware of Sumai's gaze, so she stands to face her. With Sumai frozen in fear, the woman starts to approach her. The ghostly figure hovers with blood trickling from her leg, and a hand abruptly emerges from beneath her dress. Just then, Sumai snaps out and realizes that everything was just a dream. Shortly after, she notices blood stains on her bedding as well as on her sister's shorts, indicating that they are on their periods. In order to get the sanitary pads, Sumai heads to her stepmother's room, where she discovers that Yeonju is also menstruating. It is a bit strange that the three women in the house have synchronized their menstrual cycles on the same day. Afterwards, the two sisters are on the balcony, whistling their biological mother's favorite melody. In the midst of this, they are approached by their father, who tells them not to stay outside as it's cold. Sumai approaches the topic of getting rid of Suyeon's wardrobe, but her father reminds that they have agreed not to talk about it. The relationship between father and daughter appears to be cold, marked by frequent disagreements. Later in the day, Sumai finds some family photographs which reveal that Unju was formerly an in-home nurse who had cared for their terminally ill mother prior to her passing. Just then, Sugyeon enters the room, and the two sisters rummage through their mother's belongings together. Amidst this, Sumai discovers bruises on Sugyeon's arm. She angrily asks if their stepmother did so, but the young girl refuses to answer and runs out. Determined to seek answers, Sumai questions Unju about the injuries, but her stepmom adamantly refuses to apologize for her actions. The same night, Unju's brother, Sunkyu, along with his wife, Maihee, arrive for dinner. During the meal, Unju cracks some insensitive jokes, creating an odd situation for everyone. Not long after, Maihee abruptly collapses to the ground and begins convulsing. Sunkyu and Mugyeon rush to her aid, and eventually manage to calm her down. Once she recovers, the couple drives away. En route, Maihee confides in her husband, revealing that she saw the ghost of a dead girl beneath the kitchen sink during her seizure. Back at home, Yeonju notices the sink door opening on its own. Curious, she slowly approaches and closes it. She then proceeds to inspect beneath the sink, but finds nothing amiss. Unbeknownst to her, a girl with long hair is seated at the dining table. Sensing an eerie presence, Unju turns around, but the girl vanishes. Just then, she spots a hair clip on the floor. Confused, she bends to pick it up, but a ghostly hand suddenly grasps her arm, scaring her heart out. She hastily retreats, but soon finds herself face to face with the girl from the dining table. She later confides in her husband, explaining that strange occurrences have been happening in the house ever since Sume's return. However, Moo-hyun does not believe in her and asks her to take a rest for a while. Later on, Moo-hyun makes a grim discovery. Unju's beloved pet bird has been killed inside its cage. Upon learning of this, Unju storms into Soo-yeon's room in a fit of anger. There she finds that her pictures have been torn apart, with her face deliberately scratched out. Convinced that these actions are done by the girls, she physically assaults Soo-yeon and locks her in the closet. Not long after, Soo-mai hears her sister's screams and rushes to check on her. Hearing Soo-yeon's cries from the closet, she hastily unlocks it and releases her. Soo-mai then apologizes for not being able to hear her cries sooner and vows to protect her from further harm. A short while later, their father walks in and asks Soo-mai about the reason why she is acting weirdly ever since she returned. Soo-mai tells him about Unju's mistreatment towards Soo-yeon. In an unexpected turn of events, her father begs her to stop acting out and informs her that Soo-yeon is dead. However, Soo-mai refuses to accept this, as she sees her sister right next to her, sobbing uncontrollably. The following morning, Unju drags a blood-stained sack through the house and starts beating it with a stick. The noise awakens Soo-mai, who then heads downstairs to investigate. Upon witnessing a trail of blood staining the floor, she believes that her sister is inside the sack. She tries to open it, but struggles in her efforts. Soon after, her stepmother appears from behind and is ready to throw boiling water on her. This ensues a violent altercation between the two, during which Soo-mai hits her head on the counter and falls unconscious. Following this, Unju drags her into the living room before retrieving a garden statue. As Soo-mai regains consciousness, she finds her stepmother kneeling beside her. Unju claims that Soo-mai will never be able to get rid of all the painful memories from the past because Soo-yeon will follow her like a ghost. She then raises the heavy garden statue with an intention to smash it into Soo-mai's head. But fortunately, Moo-hyun arrives in the nick of time, prompting her to retreat. He notices Soo-mai lying down injured on the floor and quickly carries her to her bedroom. He then starts looking around the house for some first aid. Amidst this, he notices the messy state of his house, causing him to feel strange. He also sees some bloody doll tied up in the sack in the closet. Shortly after, Moo-hyun finds his wife sitting on the living room couch. He gives her some medication, while also asking her to control her violent behavior. After a brief conversation, Moo-hyun exits the room. Seconds later, the room's door opens again, and a person wearing a suit enters the room. The camera pans to reveal that this person is none other than Unju, while the one previously seated on the couch is Soo-mai. It is ultimately revealed that Soo-mai and her father were alone in the house the entire time. The scene shifts to a flashback, and we are shown that Soo-mai was the one dragging the sack across the floor earlier. The content in the sack was actually a porcelain doll, and she was also the one who killed the pet bird. It is further disclosed that she had returned home, without her sister because Soo-yeon died a long time ago. Finally, we come to learn that Soo-mai had suffered from dissociative identity disorder, in which she possessed two distinct personalities, herself and her perception of her stepmother. For some reason, she hates her stepmother a lot. As a result, the conversations and events she previously had with Soo-yeon and her stepmother were the result of her schizophrenic mind. Moreover, the portrayal of the stepmother in the earlier scene was merely a construct of Soo-mai's imagination. In the aftermath of this revelation, Soo-mai promptly takes medication in order to stabilize her emotions. After all of this, the father and the real Unju take Soo-mai back to the mental institution. Unju is seen waiting outside the wardroom with a worried face. After Soo-mai's checkup, she tries to offer consolation, promising to visit her as often as possible. However, Soo-mai remains silent. Later in the evening, Unju is alone at home when she hears footsteps coming from Soo-yeon's old bedroom. She enters the room to investigate, only to be startled by movement behind the curtains. She proceeds to open the curtains, but the door shuts from behind and the lights begin to flicker. The tension escalates as the closet door opens on its own. Upon walking closer, she is confronted with a horrifying sight. A ghostly figure crawls out and ultimately kills Unju. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Soo-mai has a smile on her face, seemingly having found peace. The scene then flashes back to the time when the children's terminally ill mother was still alive. During that period, Mugyun was in an affair with Unju, who used to serve as their in-home nurse. This betrayal devastated their biological mother, leading her to commit the unthinkable inside the closet of Suyen's room. The following morning, Suyen found her mother's motionless body, setting her in panic. She tried to revive her by shaking the lifeless body, but unfortunately, the closet collapsed on top of her. The little girl struggled to escape but couldn't lift the heavy closet. Hearing the loud noise, the stepmother came to check but callously abandoned the suffocating child instead of helping. However, she soon had a change of heart and headed back. Halfway through, she crossed paths with Sumai, who criticized Unju for interfering with her family. Enraged by Suma's words, the stepmother vented her anger on Sudian by leaving her to die. She also told Sumai that she will regret her actions one day. With this argument, Sumai leaves the house in anger, unaware of both her sister and her mother's fate. This incident traumatized Sumai, ending her up in the mental hospital. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay on top of all the latest recap and never miss a bit. Thank you for watching.